Welcome everybody to another episode of Fins Nation. I am your host Louis Sung, and today what we're going to be discussing is the Miami Dolphins offensive line and just how close we were to having a really serious problem on it. So, as everybody is aware by now, because anybody who is a Dolphins fan probably heard about this and probably had a heart attack at the exact same time as everybody else, Terron Armstead had a little bit of a scare in practice yesterday when his ankle got rolled up on during practice and he ended up getting carted off, unable to put any weight on his ankle. And all of us collectively, I am sure, thought to ourselves, this season just took a massive blow that we do not know if we can recover from. So we're going to talk about that and all the things that went into these thoughts. But before that, really quick, just want to go ahead and mention that, as always, this show is brought to you by our good friends over at You Brake Wheel Fix. You Brake Wheel Fix is the complete automotive wheel solution. Ever parked too close to the sidewalk curb? You Brake Wheel Fix specializes in the repair of damaged wheels from bends, cracks, and curb rash. Or maybe your wheels are faded or peeling. You don't need to replace them, as You Brake Wheel Fix can refinish them to like new. Offering complete refinish options through powder coating, machining, and polishing, You Brake Wheel Fix is the answer to all of your wheel needs. And if you're just looking to give your ride a new look, You Brake Wheel Fix also offers many car customizing options, such as new custom wheels and tires from your favorite brands, performance upgrades, window tinting, and suspension modifications. Located just south of Aventura, you can reach Mark and his staff at 305-748-0112 or online at youbrakewheelfix.com. They are really active on all social media platforms at You Brake Wheel Fix, so shoot them a DM on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter and get an estimate in just minutes. So don't delay, go to You Brake Wheel Fix and start customizing your ride to show off your Dolphins fandom today. This show is also brought to you by PrizePicks.com. PrizePicks.com is the revolutionary fantasy platform where you can now pick up to 6 different players across professional sports leagues. Whether that's the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, one of each, it's up to you to decide. Just choose whether your chosen player will get more or less in their projected stat. They give you free squares, special Taco Tuesday promos, Flex Friday specials where you can get your money back if you lose, or multiply the amount of money you can normally win. That is today, so make sure you're taking advantage of this offer. With an offer like that, how can you justify not signing up if you're any kind of a fantasy sports fan? Use that promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E, and they will match up to $100 on your initial deposit when you sign up. Again, that's promo code 5, F-I-V-E. Go to prizepicks.com, deposit $100, start taking advantage of Flex Friday, and go ahead and get started winning today. So let's discuss the Terron Armstead scare real quick here, folks. Because I feel like when everybody heard the news that Terron Armstead had been injured and had been carted off the field, already we were getting flashbacks of exactly what happened with Jalen Ramsey. When in training camp, he ended up getting injured, and all of a sudden he had to get carted off the field. And then when we heard news that he wasn't able to put any weight on his right leg, that he was not able to actually get anywhere, that he was not able to properly even put on his shoe because he couldn't get his leg extended, everybody was fearing the absolute worst. And we were thinking, this is going to be it. This is Terron Armstead going out for the season, and the Miami Dolphins' already tenuous line at best is going to be even worse, and Tua Tagovailoa is in serious danger. They would have to make some kind of trade or maybe sign Dalton Risner with a lot of money involved. They would have to do something if they didn't want their season to go up in smoke. However, everybody got lucky because, as it turns out, shortly after everything went down, Terron Armstead posted a video of him walking, and then there was a picture of him shown leaving the Texans facility with crutches on. But you know what? Hey, you know, he was walking without the use of those crutches in that video that he himself posted after the injury had taken place. And so we are hoping that it looks like it's not going to be quite as bad as we were assuming, because if the guy is going out of his way to say, hey, everybody, I'm okay, don't worry about it, then I feel like that we should be able to take him as his word at least a little bit. Now, here is the question that we all have to ask ourselves. If something happens to Terron Armstead, what is the best course of action for the Miami Dolphins at that point? Because we have to take into account several different factors. Number one, Terron Armstead, as incredible as he is shown to be extremely unreliable when it comes to his availability. I know that he pushed through a lot of the season last season. He should have been out for the season before the week 1 even started because of his injuries with his toe, and then he added on his pec, and then he added on so much other stuff, and he still played through it like an absolute warrior. but we don't want him to have to be fighting through injuries all the time. What we would like is for him to actually be healthy enough to play in a game without us having to worry about whether he was going to have to get carted off the field later. That's what we would like from Terron Armstead. And just as a quick reminder for everybody, when it comes to Terron Armstead, we have to also look at his contract, because in Terron Armstead's defense, as much money as he is making, he is absolutely worth every penny when it comes to things like his performance. When he is on the field, Terron Armstead is a top 3 offensive tackle in this NFL. Of that, I am 100% sure of. So this dude is possibly one of the best players to play left tackle in NFL history. But, and this is the problem, is that he has a lot of money on his contract that the Dolphins are not going to be able to get out of very easily. Just looking at his contract on Over the Cap, if the Miami Dolphins were to try and get rid of Terron Armstead because they decided that his injury history, his liability to get hurt, is more than it's worth to actually keep him around, if the Dolphins were to try to do that, he would end up costing the Dolphins, at least even in 2024. If you try to cut him pre-June 1st, the Dolphins would be losing out on about $25 million in cap space, and they would actually lose $3.4 million in cap space overall. So they literally save nothing. They gain a negative $27.5 million in cap space if you try to cut Terron Armstead pre-June 1st. Well, then you would probably be asking, but what about post-June 1st? What if we do the Byron Jones treatment? If you do the Byron Jones treatment with Terron Armstead, then you end up getting about $9.2 million in cap savings, but you still end up losing more in dead money because it's $11.3 million in dead cash. And we already have around $10 million in dead cash just from the Byron Jones thing. So why would you want to go ahead and add more to it by cutting Terron Armstead? So you can't even afford to do that. Okay, so now we play this game. What if the Dolphins were miraculously able to trade Terron Armstead? Well, again, the only thing that makes any sort of sense is if you decide to trade him after June 1st. If the Dolphins were to trade Terron Armstead, hypothetically speaking, then they would only have about $6.3 million in dead cap space, and they would gain about $14.25 million in cap savings. So their best bet is to find somebody to trade for Terron Armstead if that is the decision they end up making. But the problem with that is that you would have to find a trade partner. And I understand that there will probably be teams that are willing to take on the likes of a Terron Armstead just because of how good that he is. You're probably not going to get like extremely high draft capital for him. You probably get maybe a 3rd or a 4th rounder, or maybe a swap of some picks, because Terron Armstead, if you're getting rid of Terron Armstead, it is because you are firmly convinced at that point that he just will not stay healthy for your team and that you're not going to get anything out of him. So this is not me saying the Dolphins should trade Terron Armstead. I am saying the opposite, that they need to hang on to Terron Armstead just because of how good he can potentially be for a team when he is healthy. It is worth it to keep him around, not just because he's a fantastic player, but because he's also a fantastic teacher for the younger players. I would like to point this out. I have said this many times in the past. I think that there is inherent value in having veteran players who are able to help tutor the younger players who are going to be coming up behind them. You don't think that the likes of Ryan Hayes are benefiting from having Terron Armstead around? The likes of Keon Smith, they're benefiting from having Terron Armstead around easily. They are learning so much from him. And even after the first preseason game against the Atlanta Falcons, we walked away from certain players on this offensive line and thought to ourselves, there might actually be something there. For instance, nobody really thought there was going to be much from Ryan Hayes. He was a 7th-round draft pick. You didn't think you were going to get anything out of him. But so far, based on what we've seen in the preseason, and I know that we're going to see the Texans game coming up soon, we'll get to see more of him, I'm sure. But so far, it looks like there might actually be something there, which is kind of shocking when you think about it. Because usually 7th-round draft picks, particularly when they're offensive linemen, they don't pan out for the Dolphins that easily. But it looks like Ryan Hayes just might, and I say that very loosely, just might have something that he can offer this team. I don't want to be too optimistic too early because I know the Dolphins' track record when it comes to offensive linemen, it's not good. But if I can hang on to even a glimmer of hope when it comes to some of these young offensive linemen, I'm going to take it at this point, because I really need somebody to step up quick and in a hurry. Because if something does happen to Terron Armstead, I do not want to think that the season is over just because we lost one player. It's very, very sad when you feel like all your hopes and dreams for success are hinging on somebody staying healthy, and it's not even your quarterback. Now, I feel the same way. If Tua were to go down and Terron Armstead stayed healthy, I'd still feel the same way about the season. I would still think that we are in serious trouble, and I'm not sure how they're going to be able to find the same success. But Terron Armstead is that caliber of player where something can massively make a difference, and we may not have a way to replace it. As much as I respect Kendall Lamb and how much work he's done, and the fact that he was able to prove his old coach George Godsey wrong, I can respect all of that. But do I really want to hinge the Dolphins' entire season on the fact that Kendall Lamb, who is in his own right injury prone, do I really want to hinge the whole season on him? I don't think anyone actually really does. Again, I respect Kendall Lamb. I think that he is a very valuable backup, and the fact that he is able to it seems like he's already the swing tackle. He wasn't even playing against the Falcons. I just feel like Kendall Lamb has already cemented himself a spot on the roster because he's earned it. I believe that he's earned it. But it's very hard for me to think that going from Terron Armstead to Kendall Lamb is anything less than a massive downgrade. And I understand what kind of a standard I'm trying to hold Kendall Lamb to. I'm trying to compare him to an all-pro left tackle who is one of the best at what he does. I understand that. But it's still scary to think about. To understand that your season could potentially be over because one dude ended up getting unlucky, and that was the end of it. Now, I get it. Tua's played behind worse lines before, and it's not like the Dolphins would be completely helpless. Again, Kendall Lamb is good. He's a good player. He's not a great player, but he's a good player. And maybe good is really all we need to make this offense function if we still have the likes of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and whoever the third wide receiver turns out to be. And we'll have our running game going. Hopefully, I have my fingers crossed on that one. And as the defense gets better, and the defense gets better from what it was last season in particular, then I feel like the Dolphins could still get pretty far as long as the offense doesn't take too far of a step back. There were some games where Terron Armstead was not available, but you could tell what had changed. You could tell the difference. You could tell the offensive line severely missed having Terron Armstead on it. And when he was not in the game, the offensive line as a whole just did not function the way that it was supposed to. You can't lose a player of that caliber and just shrug it off like it's no big deal. So now we need to ask ourselves, what should we do with Terron Armstead? Because it's very possible that the Miami Dolphins are going to find themselves in a very uncomfortable situation when it comes to him. Week 1, the Miami Dolphins will be facing off against the Los Angeles Chargers. And this is already a team that absolutely wrecked Miami's offense last season, and they just could not keep up with whatever it was they were doing on defense. It just wasn't working. So now you need the Dolphins' offense to be able to counteract whatever the defense could throw at them. But what the Dolphins are going to be facing is a healthy Chargers team with some of the best defensive players that you can imagine facing down their offensive line, which if Terron Armstead is not ready to go by week 1, that means you're going to have the likes of Kendall Lamb and Austin Jackson facing off against players like Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Did anybody remember that Khalil Mack is now a member of the Los Angeles Chargers? I had almost forgotten. And so just knowing that Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa are both going to be bearing down on these guys. Listen, like I said, I respect the heck out of Kendall Lamb, but Kendall Lamb is a backup for a reason. He is not somebody that you want to be facing guys like that on a regular basis. And there will be more coming in the future. There are a lot of really good pass rushers that the Miami Dolphins are going to be facing as the weeks go on. And we need Terron Armstead back and healthy, and we need him back soon. So what exactly would I do if I'm the Miami Dolphins? Because I know that Terron Armstead has been trying to up his workload as of late, but even Armstead himself admitted that he wasn't really ready to play in the regular season. He even said, and I quote, I'll go ahead and read this quote for you from August 16th, Process. I'm still getting ready. I don't feel like I'm fully ready yet for the regular season, but we don't have a game yet. Still working through that process, trying to get more reps to get more game ready and get my body feeling optimal. Just get it as good as possible to go out and play some ball. That was Terron Armstead speaking this past Wednesday, talking about how he was not yet ready. He himself is saying, no, I'm not quite there yet. And now we have this setback, where now we are not sure how long it's going to take for his ankle to get back into gear. If Terron Armstead tries to go week 1 and he ends up aggravating an injury that he took because something unlucky happened to him and he ended up getting rolled up upon during a joint practice, can you imagine how terrible that's going to be for the season? I do not want to suddenly go all doom and gloom on everybody. I do not want to suddenly start talking like, if we don't have Terron Armstead, there's no point in playing the rest of the season. I'm not going to say that. But it would be a massive blow to this offense, and nobody can deny that Terron Armstead makes this offense as a whole much, much better. We need him. We need him available for the majority of the season. So if I'm the Miami Dolphins, I would probably be willing to let him sit out the first 3 weeks if it means that Terron Armstead will be finished and ready to go for the next 14 weeks. Because that, to me, is more important, because we need him down the stretch, not just in the middle. Like, when you start the season, everybody is still feeling themselves out. You're going to get the starters trying to get themselves into a rhythm because, yeah, you can practice all you want, but it's a lot different than being in a real game. Maybe you can get away with making some mistakes. But once you're getting into mid-season and you're getting into the end of the season and you're making those playoff pushes, you need to be able to be firing on all cylinders at all times if you want to be able to find that success. I would rather have Terron Armstead for the majority of the season down the stretch than try to force him back early and make it seem like, oh, well, we ended up making it worse because we were just so desperate to have our best offensive tackle out there. It's a very difficult situation that the Dolphins are in right now. And I know that this is something that I don't want to harp on it like this is the end of the world. But if I'm the Miami Dolphins and I'm Mike McDaniel and I am Chris Grier, I am taking a very, very, very hard look at this offensive line now. They were so nonchalant about it. They were so casual about the fact that, no, the offensive line is fine. They'll be okay. Even hearing words like, you guys are more worried about the offensive line than we are. If I were you two, and speaking like this is Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier, if I were you guys, I would start taking a very serious look at your own personal philosophy when it comes to this offensive line. Because if I were them, I would suddenly be like, oh, that's why everybody was worried about the offensive line. Yeah, because this means that if anything happened to Armstead, or if anything happens to Connor Williams, or if anything happens to Robert Hunt, do you understand that the backups that you have are not exactly proven commodities? If you really want to make the Super Bowl, which you won't invest this much money if you are not willing to push for that Super Bowl. If you don't want that ring, you don't buy Jalen Ramsey from the Los Angeles Rams. You do not go out and get Tyreek Hill, and you do not go out and you get all of these incredible players in just the hopes of what? Making it to the AFC Championship game? The goal is Super Bowl. That is what you're after. And if I'm the Miami Dolphins, I would start taking a very serious look at how this offensive line is structured. Terron Armstead cannot be the linchpin for this season. He just can't. So start looking very closely. Look at Dalton Risner if you have to. Look at other options. Make a trade if you feel like it'll make sure that if something happens to Terron Armstead, you have a very, very strong backup that can get the job done and won't be an injury risk of their own. Because, again, Kendall Lamb, respect him. He got hurt after one game. And that was the end of Kendall Lamb. He got kept around because of that performance he had during that one game against the New England Patriots. That's not enough, man. That's not enough for me to be convinced that he's going to be healthy this time. I need to see more. But anyway, that's going to be it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. This is the last show for the week. We will be back next week with more Fins Nation. However, on Saturday, of course, we will have a pregame, we will have a postgame, and we will be looking forward to giving you that. Today is Flex Friday on Prize Picks, our sponsor. Make sure that you go and you sign up using the promo code 5, that's F-I-V-E. They will match up to $100 on your deposit when you sign up. And of course, go to You Break Wheel Fix if you need to get your wheels fixed or if you want to give your ride the ultimate Dolphins makeover. 305-748-0112 is the number to call, or you can go to youbreakwheelfix.com to get an estimate in just minutes. That's going to be it. See you all next week for another episode of Fins Nation.